getting ready for what most, or just about everybody who makes sense, says is the best rivalry in college hoops, Duke-UNC. We've got David Glen, host of The David Glen Show. Follow him on Twitter, @David Glen Show. David, before we get into the actual game, I used to really dislike Grayson Allen, but I have bought in now, and I love him. He may be my favorite villain in all of hoops. Has anybody else gone through this journey with him the way I have, or is most people just either love or hate him from the beginning?
Well, probably some Duke fans may have ridden that same roller coaster, but as with most things Duke, there are those who start from the pro-Duke angle and usually stay there, or those who start with the anti-Duke angle and usually stay there. And Grayson Allen is on that long list of polarizing figures that goes back, through Christian Laettner and beyond among those who wore that uniform. So you might be a rare example, but Grayson Allen is one of those guys, man, where the opinions have been absolutely all over the place.
You're dealing with North Carolina sports fans that are all over the place. Duke fans, UNC fans. Have the Duke fans embraced Grayson Allen like we've seen other controversial superstars' home bases embrace their stars? Or are some Duke fans actually kind of upset by Allen's actions?
I think it varies. It's really hard to paint with a broad brush there because I'll tell you what, I've followed Coach K for the last 30 years of his career, and there are few examples that I've personally encountered where I thought he was being disingenuous with his public comments. And what I mean by that is a lot of Duke fans rallied to Grayson Allen's defense last year, even when the rest of the world was saying, hey, Grayson Allen might be a fine young man in other ways, but he has a problem with intentionally tripping his opponents. Mike Krzyzewski's public comments, other Duke assistant coaches, their public comments, even the players. Last year it was like one wacky, wild world of Duke denying what the rest of the world saw as obvious. And then somehow over the summer, Grayson Allen admits to a reporter that, yes, he has a problem. And Duke starts admitting little by little, yes, he did those things on purpose. He got caught. He should be sorry. We need to address it. It was a really weird start to the Grayson Allen story when Duke is that late coming around officially on whether he even had a problem. I think that swayed a lot of Duke fans to, of course, blaming the media, blaming the Duke haters, rather than where most of them eventually settled, and that is, yeah, Grayson had a problem. They may argue now that the media can go over the top on plays that, really are not as big of an issue, but most of them did eventually admit, yeah, this young man has a problem. He gets penalized, he moves on, and we get back to enjoying this rivalry in Duke basketball.
Just so you know how far we've gone, we have David Glen from the David Glen Show right here on 104.5 The Team. Just so you know how far we went, David. This is like every time there was a Grayson Allen story, this is what we would do on the show. And then guys just go, guys.
Good God Almighty! Like the old WWE heel. The old WWE style when the bad guy would show up? That's what Grayson Allen felt like to us. It turned into pro wrestling.
It's funny. I had to do a presentation at a college basketball game for something that we do with our statewide show. And at the same time I was making the presentation and being introduced in front of thousands of people, the opposing team's cheerleaders used that moment to take the court. So, of course, you have thousands of people booing because it's the arch-rival cheerleaders doing the show for the first time. And all my buddies are saying, DG, they're booing you, they're booing you. And as I came off the court, I actually said to my buddies who were taunting me and making fun of me and all that, I said, now I know what Grayson Allen feels like, and now I know what, George the Animal Steel back in the day felt like when he was being introduced as one of the heels of the day.
The ultimate villain himself, David Glen, DG, joining us. Is this North Carolina basketball team this year actually better than the team that lost to Villanova at the buzzer in the national championship game last year?
Not yet, but it has a chance to be. They have to tighten the screws defensively under Roy Williams, which is one of the common themes. I mean, he has that fastest fast break in America. He has some offensive balance, meaning perimeter and post, as well as almost anybody in the country. But in the years like 05 and 09, where Roy Williams' teams had those things but needed a little more defensively, he found that down the stretch. And that was pivotal in those teams, rather than just being really good teams, they ended up cutting down the nets in 05 and 09. I think he talks about that challenge with this particular group. Joel Berry's a great point guard. Justin Jackson's an NBA pick on the wing. They have 2 senior big men in Isaiah Hicks and Kennedy Meeks. That's a heck of a strong foundation offensively and in terms of rebounding. But they're often vulnerable on defense. And until they get better there, they're going to be vulnerable to, losing at Georgia Tech, losing at Miami, or in the one-and-done environment of the postseason. You guys know all it takes is one, hot shooting night from a team that maybe your weak defense early allows them to gain confidence. That's how you go from, instead of being the national champion potentially to being sent home early on that first or second weekend of the NCAA tournament.
There's no doubt about that. And I like to remind Levack, as I am a born and bred Syracuse Orange fan, that it only takes one. It takes you to get into the tournament. And Syracuse is turning things around, and I'm starting to wonder if the ACC now, with the Syracuse turnaround, should be classified as the best conference in college basketball this season.
I think there's only 2 candidates. It's the Big 12 and the ACC. And you could argue who's deeper, who's stronger top to bottom. I know this, the ACC's all-time record for most NCAA tournament bids in a single season is 7. And there is roughly a 100% chance that the ACC will break that record this year. Now, you guys probably talk about, of course, that legendary year in the Big East. They got 11 bids in a single year. I don't think the ACC will get quite to that point, but your top 5 or 6, you've got the resurgence of Syracuse. You have, those teams in the middle like Miami and Georgia Tech who are trying to polish their resumes. I wouldn't be surprised if the final number is 9 or 10. And most of them are not legit candidates for, say, the Final 4. But at the very top, UNC, UVA, Louisville, maybe Duke, we'll see, maybe others. That top tier is as good as anybody in the nation has to offer.
David Glen with us, host of the David Glen Show, which happens to be the largest North Carolina sports talk show ever. So the right guy to reach out to when we want to know what we expect to happen tonight. How do you see tonight's game between North Carolina and Duke playing out?
We've had this weird home team theme this year in the ACC. Like, it's extreme how often the home team wins. So the Vegas better inside of me says you better take the Blue Devils tonight, and you better take the Tar Heels when this rematch happens, in almost a month in Chapel Hill. Coach K is back, remember. Grayson Allen has had time to adjust to his new role. Emil Jefferson's getting a little bit healthier. Jason Tatum, their star freshman, has been gaining confidence lately. So I wouldn't bet your nickel, my nickel, or the kids' college tuition fund on this stuff. But if I had to pick, I'd take the Devils on Coach K court, just like I would take the Tar Heels later this year in the Smith Center.
If you're a fan of North Carolina sports, you got to follow at David Glen Show. David Glen, we appreciate you, my friend.
A lot of fun, guys. Jeff, Tom, take care. Good talking with you.
Talk to you soon.